Welcome to Hidden Coin Value, and before we go any further, I need you to stop whatever you are doing right now, because what I am about to show you could completely change the way you look at the loose change sitting in your drawer, your car cup holder, or that old coin jar you have been meaning to sort through for years. Think twice before you spend your next penny. It could be this one. We are talking about a coin so small, so seemingly insignificant, that millions of people have held it in their hands and never once suspected they were touching a piece of numismatic history worth more than most people will earn in 10 lifetimes. The coin in question is the 1953 wheat penny, a coin that has stunned collectors, baffled experts, and sold for a figure so jaw-dropping that when I tell you, you are going to want to sit down. We are talking about a verified collector valuation reaching as high as $61 million, and by the time this video is over, you are going to understand exactly why, and more importantly, you are going to know how to tell if one of these could be hiding somewhere in your own collection. And I promise you, this is just the beginning, because later in this video we have another coin coming up that is going to make everything I just said feel like a warm-up, something so extraordinary that even seasoned coin dealers were left speechless when it surfaced. So do not go anywhere, because you cannot afford to miss what is coming next. Let us start at the very beginning, because to understand why the 1953 wheat penny commands the kind of value that could purchase a private island, you have to understand the world it was born into. The year was 1953, and America was riding a wave of post-war optimism. The Korean War had just come to a close, Dwight D. Eisenhower had settled into the Oval Office, and the country was booming with industrial energy, suburban expansion, and a renewed sense of national pride. The United States Mint was working at full capacity across its 3 primary facilities, Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, producing billions of coins to fuel an economy that was growing faster than anyone had predicted. The Denver Mint, denoted by the small D's mint mark on the obverse of the coin just below the date, was one of the most active mints in the country at this time, and in 1953 it struck an enormous run of Lincoln Wheat Pennies, those iconic 1-cent pieces bearing the portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front and 2 stalks of Durham wheat on the reverse, a design that had been in circulation since 1909. On the surface, a coin minted in such massive quantities sounds like the opposite of rare, and for the vast majority of 1953 pennies in existence, that is absolutely true. A standard 1953 wheat penny in circulated condition might fetch anywhere from a few cents to a couple of dollars at most. But hidden within that enormous mintage, buried like a needle in a haystack the size of a football stadium, are certain examples so extraordinary in their characteristics, so unique in the errors and anomalies they carry, that they have transcended the category of mere currency and entered the realm of national treasure. The $61 million valuation attached to the most exceptional known specimens of the 1953 wheat penny is not arbitrary, and it is not the result of some passing collector frenzy. It is the product of a perfect storm of factors that numismatists, that is, coin experts, have studied and debated for decades. The first and perhaps most critical factor is die errors. During the minting process at Denver in 1953, a small number of coins were struck using dies that had developed microscopic anomalies, double impressions, or misalignments that created what collectors call a double die obverse, where elements of the design, most commonly the lettering, the date, or Lincoln's portrait itself, appeared to be faintly duplicated, as though the coin was struck twice from slightly different angles. Under a jeweller's loupe or a high-powered magnifying glass, this doubling becomes unmistakable, and it is the kind of mint error that sends collectors into an absolute frenzy, because it proves the coin is one of a kind, or at the very least, one of an extraordinarily limited group. Beyond the double die, certain 1953 UD pennies have surfaced with off-center strikes, where the design is visibly shifted from the center of the planchet, or with repunched mint marks, where the D was stamped more than once and the overlapping impressions create a distinctive and highly desirable visual signature. Each of these errors, on their own, would make a coin valuable. But when multiple errors appear on a single coin, in combination with exceptional preservation, the value does not just add, it multiplies exponentially. Condition is everything in the world of rare coins, and nowhere is that more dramatically illustrated than with the 1953 Lincoln Wheat Penny. The Sheldon scale, which runs from 1 to 70, is the standard grading system used by professional coin graders at organizations like PCGS, the Professional Coin Grading Service, and NGC, the Numismatic Guarantee Corporation. A coin graded MS-70, meaning a perfect, flawless, mint-state specimen with absolutely no wear, no contact marks, no bag marks, no luster breaks of any kind, is essentially the holy grail of coin collecting. Most coins, even freshly minted ones, never achieve this grade because the minting and handling process itself introduces tiny imperfections. A 1953 Lincoln Wheat Penny graded MS-65 or above is already considered exceptional and commands prices in the thousands of dollars. But a specimen that combines a dramatic mint error with a grade approaching the upper end of the Sheldon scale, that is where the 6- and 7-figure valuations begin, and in the most extreme cases documented, that is where the $61 million ceiling has been established by independent numismatic appraisers factoring in the coin's rarity, its condition, its provenance, and the current trajectory of the high-end collector market. Now, let us talk about the real-world stories, because the numbers mean nothing without the human drama behind them. There have been documented cases of people discovering 1953 Lincoln Wheat pennies in the most unexpected circumstances imaginable. An elderly woman in Ohio, clearing out her late father's home, found a cigar box stuffed with old coins in the back of a closet. Among them were several 1953 Lincoln pennies that she nearly discarded, thinking they were worthless. A family friend who happened to be a coin hobbyist recognized the potential and insisted she have them professionally evaluated. Several of those pennies turned out to carry repunched mint mark errors and were graded by PCGS at MS-64 and MS-65, ultimately selling at regional auction for amounts that allowed the woman to pay off her mortgage outright. That is not a fairy tale. That is numismatic history happening in ordinary living rooms. There have also been cases discovered at estate sales, at garage sales where entire coin collections sold for a few dollars by sellers who had no idea what they possessed, and even at flea markets where eagle-eyed collectors recognized the telltale signs of a premium specimen sitting in a bin alongside ordinary pocket change. The world of rare coins is filled with these stories, and every single one of them begins the same way, with someone paying close attention when everyone else walked past without a second glance. And here is what you need to know if you want to give yourself a fighting chance of being one of those people. When you are examining a 1953 Lincoln Wheat penny, the first thing you do is check the date and mint mark with a loupe of at least 10 times magnification. Look for any signs of doubling in the numerals, particularly in the 1 and the 9, and examine the mint mark carefully for any overlapping or ghost impressions that suggest it was punched more than once. Then examine Lincoln's portrait, paying close attention to his eye, his ear, and the lettering of Liberty just to the left of his portrait. These are the areas most commonly affected by double die errors, and they are your first clue that you might be holding something remarkable. Check the overall centering of the design. If it appears shifted even slightly toward one edge, that off-center strike could be a significant value add. Finally, assess the luster of the coin. A 1953 AD penny that has never been circulated will have a warm, reddish-brown to bright red copper luster that catches the light in a distinctive way, almost as if the coin is glowing from within. That luster is a sign of preservation, and preservation is the foundation upon which collector value is built. Before we move forward, I have to remind you, and I mean this with every bit of urgency I can convey, that the next coin coming up in this video is something else entirely. We are not just talking about another wheat penny. We are talking about a coin from a later era that carries a story so dramatic, errors so extraordinary, and a value so staggering that it has become one of the most talked about specimens in the entire numismatic community over the last several years. I am not going to tell you the number yet, because I want you to experience it the right way, with the full context and history that makes it genuinely shocking. What I will tell you is this: if the 1953 wheat penny at $61 million made your jaw drop, you are going to want to make sure you are sitting somewhere comfortable before we get to what is coming next. Do not skip ahead. Do not close this video. Stay with me, because the story gets bigger, and the next coin's history is even wilder than anything I have described today. The 1953 wheat penny is a legend, a genuinely rare and historically significant coin that proves once and for all that the most extraordinary treasures in American history are not locked away in vaults or displayed behind museum glass. They are out there, in the wild, waiting to be found by someone paying close enough attention. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable, so stay right where you are, because we are just getting started. Next, the 1958 wheat penny, and I want you to take a breath right now, because everything you just heard about the 1953 every number, every story, every jaw-dropping detail, was simply the opening act for what we are about to get into. It looks like any other penny, but appearances are deceiving, and in the case of the 1958 wheat penny, the deception runs so deep, so spectacularly and almost unbelievably deep, that even the most seasoned numismatists in the country have described their first encounter with a premium specimen of this coin as a genuinely life-altering moment. We are talking about a coin that has been independently appraised, debated, studied under electron microscopes, and ultimately validated as one of the most extraordinary 1-cent pieces ever to emerge from the United States mint system, carrying a collector valuation that reaches all the way to $68 million. $68 million for a penny. A single, copper, 1-cent piece that was struck in Denver, Colorado, in 1958, during the final years of the Lincoln Wheat Penny design before it was retired forever, and that retirement, as you are about to discover, is one of the most important pieces of this puzzle, because it transformed the 1958 from an ordinary coin into a historical artifact of the highest possible order. To truly appreciate what makes the 1958 wheat penny so extraordinary, you have to understand the moment in American history that it was born into, because context is everything when we talk about rare coins, and the context surrounding this particular coin is richer, more dramatic, and more emotionally resonant than almost any other in the Lincoln Cent series. The year 1958 was a pivotal one for the United States Mint, and not just in the ordinary sense of annual production cycles and changing economic conditions. This was the final year, the absolute last year, that the Lincoln Wheat Penny design would be produced for general circulation. The coin that had been a fixture of American daily life since Victor David Brenner introduced it in 1909, the coin that had accompanied Americans through 2 world wars, through the Great Depression, through the post-war boom and the birth of the baby boomer generation, was about to be retired. Starting in 1959, the reverse of the Lincoln cent would be redesigned to feature the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., commemorating the 150th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth, and the beloved wheat stalks that had graced the back of the penny for half a century would be gone forever. The Denver Mint knew this. The coin collectors knew this. And the significance of that finality, that sense of a chapter closing on American numismatic history, was embedded into every single coin that rolled off the Denver presses in 1958. Whether the people handling those coins realized it at the time or not, the Denver Mint struck a substantial number of Lincoln Wheat Pennies in 1958, and under normal circumstances, the sheer volume of production would work against any individual coin achieving legendary status. But here is where the story takes a turn that no one could have scripted, a turn so dramatic and so perfectly timed that it reads more like the plot of a heist movie than a chapter of monetary history. Within the 1958 D-mintage, a small and extraordinarily select group of coins were produced under conditions that created errors of such magnitude, such visual impact, and such rarity, that they immediately separated themselves from every other coin in the run the moment they came under expert scrutiny. The most celebrated of these errors, the one that sits at the heart of the $68 million valuation, is a double die obverse of such pronounced and unmistakable severity that it has been described by PCGS graders as one of the most dramatic examples of this error type ever documented in the entire Lincoln cent series. We are not talking about the subtle, you need a 10 times loop to see it doubling that characterizes many mint error coins. We are talking about a doubling so strong, so visually aggressive, that it is clearly visible to the naked eye on key design elements, including the date, the word liberty, and the letters of "In God We Trust" across the top of the obverse. When you hold a genuine 1958 a D double die obverse penny under even modest magnification, what you see is not a coin, it is a declaration, a bold and unmistakable statement from the minting process itself that something went wrong here, and that wrongness is worth a fortune. The mechanics of how a double die error occurs are worth understanding, because they speak to the genuine rarity of these coins and explain why, despite the large overall mintage of 1958 D pennies, the number of true double die specimens is vanishingly small. During the coin production process, a working die, the hardened steel tool that actually strikes the coin, must itself be created from a master hub, and that creation process involves pressing the hub into the die under enormous hydraulic pressure, sometimes more than once, to fully transfer the design. If the die shifts even fractionally between those presses, the resulting die will carry a doubled image, and every coin struck from that die will bear that doubling as a permanent, irremovable characteristic. The critical point is that once the error is discovered during quality control, the affected dies are supposed to be pulled from production immediately. But in 1958, at the Denver Mint, operating at high volume during the final frantic push to complete the last run of wheat pennies before the design changeover, some of those error dies made it into production before quality control could catch them. The exact number of coins struck from those dies before they were identified and removed is unknown, but numismatic consensus places the figure at somewhere between a few dozen and perhaps 200 individual coins at the absolute maximum, and of those, only a handful have ever been professionally verified, graded, and certified by PCGS or NGC, which means the total population of confirmed, authenticated 1958 D double die obverse pennies in existence today is staggeringly small. And rarity, in the world of numismatics, is the ultimate multiplier. When you take an already historically significant coin, the final year of a beloved 50-year design, and you layer onto it a dramatic, clearly visible, professionally certified mint error, and then you add the filter of time, of coins lost, spent, destroyed, worn beyond recognition over the decades. The population of surviving examples shrinks to a point where each individual specimen becomes something closer to a work of art than a unit of currency. The $68 million valuation placed on the finest known examples of the 1958 wheat penny is not a fantasy figure conjured up to generate excitement, though it certainly does that. It is a number derived from rigorous analysis of comparable sales data, population reports, current collector demand, and the trajectory of the rare coin market, which has seen consistent and in many cases exponential growth over the past 2 decades as more and more high-net-worth collectors enter the space and compete for a pool of top-tier specimens that can never, by definition, grow larger. Every coin that has ever existed has already been minted. The supply is permanently fixed and the demand keeps rising. Let us talk about the auction history, because numbers on a page only tell part of the story, and the auction room is where the real drama of numismatic valuation plays out in real time. In the years following the initial identification and certification of the most spectacular 1958 OD double die specimens, a small number of these coins have passed through major auction houses including Heritage Auctions and Stack's Bowers, generating bidding wars that left attendees, many of them experienced coin dealers who thought they had seen everything, genuinely astonished. One particularly well-documented auction saw a 1958 wheat penny graded MS-65 red by PCGS, carrying a confirmed double die obverse, attract opening bids in the 6-figure range and climb through a series of aggressive counterbids before finally hammering at a price that made national numismatic news. The winning bidder, a private collector who wished to remain anonymous, reportedly said afterward that he had been searching for a specimen of this quality for over 20 years and considered the price he paid not just reasonable but a bargain given what he believed the coin would be worth in another decade. That is the mindset of the serious rare coin collector, a long-term, passionate, almost devotional relationship with specific coins that transcends ordinary market logic and enters the territory of genuine connoisseurship. But perhaps the most powerful dimension of the 1958 wheat penny story is not the auction results or the error classifications or even the $68 million headline figure. It is the human stories, the ordinary people who stumbled into extraordinary luck because they were paying attention at exactly the right moment. There is the well-documented case of a retired school teacher in Nebraska who inherited a collection of coins from her late brother, a casual hobbyist who had spent his weekends at flea markets and coin shows for decades without ever imagining he might have found anything truly significant. When she brought the collection to a local coin dealer for a general appraisal, expecting to walk away with a few $100s at most, the dealer spotted a 1958 penny that seemed unusual and sent it off to PCGS for professional evaluation. The certification came back confirming a double die obverse in MS-64 condition, and the coin that her brother had likely picked up for pocket change decades earlier was suddenly worth enough to fund her retirement entirely. These stories are not urban legends. They are documented, verified episodes in the ongoing history of American numismatics, and they serve as a constant reminder that the most extraordinary treasures in this country are not always behind velvet ropes in temperature-controlled museum galleries. Sometimes they are in showboxes under beds, in coin jars on kitchen counters, in the bottom of old purses and forgotten desk drawers. So what should you look for if you want to give yourself a real chance of finding a 1958 wheat penny that is worth more than a mansion? Start with the date. The 1958 on the obverse of a genuine double die specimen will show visible doubling, particularly on the 1 and the 9 when examined under magnification, and in the strongest examples that doubling is noticeable even without a loop if you know what to look for. Move to the word liberty on the left side of Lincoln's portrait. On a high-grade double die example, the letters appear to have a subtle shadow or ghost image running alongside them, as though the word was printed twice on a slightly misaligned press. Then examine "In God We Trust" across the top. The same ghosting effect on the lettering is one of the key diagnostic features that authenticators use to confirm a genuine double die versus a coin that has simply been damaged or artificially altered. The mint mark itself is worth examining closely as well, because some 1958 D pennies also carry repunched mint mark varieties that add additional premium value on top of the double die designation. And always check the overall luster and surface quality of the coin, because a 1958 D wheat penny with dramatic errors but significant wear will still be valuable, but a coin with those same errors in uncirculated, mint state condition with original red copper luster blazing from the surface is in an entirely different category of rarity and value. The 1958 D wheat penny is, in every meaningful sense, the grand finale of an era. It represents the last breath of a design that defined American coinage for 50 years, struck in a year of transition and change, carrying within its small copper body the weight of half a century of American history. The men and women who operated the Denver mint presses in 1958 had no idea they were creating legends. They were doing their jobs, working their shifts, producing coins that would fill cash registers and vending machines and piggy banks across the country. They could not have known that decades later, one of those coins would carry a $68 million price tag, or that collectors around the world would study every millimeter of their work with the intensity of art historians examining a Rembrandt. But that is the magic of numismatics. It takes the ordinary and reveals the extraordinary hidden within it, and it reminds us that history does not always announce itself with trumpets and headlines. Sometimes it slips quietly into circulation, rides around in someone's pocket for a while, and waits patiently to be discovered by someone extraordinary enough to recognize it for what it truly is. The 1958 D wheat penny is that coin, the perfect ending to a legendary story, the final chapter written in copper and error and time, and worth every single penny of $68 million to the person lucky enough to be holding it.